Hello and welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches making the big time where they're at. This week, our host, Coach Preston Peterson, brings to you a high school strength coach who is doing it big time in the high school setting. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this week's show.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Big Time Strength Podcast. This week, I had the opportunity to interview a couple of great coaches that are truly making the big time where they're at. Coach Schwisow has worked at Basehor Linwood High School for over a decade and is currently the athletic director and assistant principal. He is totally invested in his school and his community and has impacted many students in his time at Basehor Linwood. Coach Justin Wieser is starting his second year at Basehor Linwood. He previously was the strength and conditioning coach at Emporia State University for 7 years and is bringing a ton of information and passion to his new position. In this episode, we talk about their journey through strength and conditioning, their mission for Bobcats, how they make the big time where they're at, how they build their culture, how they got their powerlifting team started, and much more. If you'd like to contact Coach Schwisow or Coach Wieser, you can find their contact information in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe and share it with other coaches. Hope you enjoy the show.
Coaches, I really appreciate having both you guys on. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. Just the amount of experience between the two of you and the way that you guys have transitioned your unique roles at Basehor Linwood and just being able to give an outstanding culture and outstanding development to all of the students at Basehor Linwood, from what I understand, elementary all the way through the high school level. I kind of want to start out with each of one of you kind of giving me a background of your strength and conditioning journey, where you started, where you're at now, and your current situation. Any details that you got for us, man, it would be awesome just to hear how you guys have got where you're at.
Yeah, hey, this is Ross Wieser. I'm the athletic director and former strength coach here at Basehor Linwood. My background is I'm a Kansas kid originally, grew up in Topeka, Kansas, and upon finishing my college education, I had been doing business finance and found myself coaching and fell in love with coaching. So I spent 4 years as a high school business and computer teacher in Rossville, Kansas. During that time, got to be a head coach of girls basketball and coach football and track, and found that I really just started volunteering in the weight room there because they didn't have anything, and fell in love with it and started to decide that being a business computer teacher wasn't going to be my life calling. And I contacted Rod Cole at K-State at the time to speak with him about how to get an opportunity, and probably spent 3 years just filling out applications for graduate assistantships, internships, trying to find things that were the right fit. So it was kind of a long process, but during the process, I was able to put myself in a position with Dr. Pat Ivey at University of Missouri. And I went there to serve as an assistant strength conditioning coach, and had the opportunity to work with football, women's basketball, golf, volleyball, and women's tennis. During that time, I just kind of felt that a lot of the kids coming in at the college level, you had two kids. You had the kid that was prepared and had been taught, and then there was a kid that hadn't, and really kind of felt the desire to go back to high school. And trying to use my experiences at University of Missouri and using that as a resume piece, I found out how limited high school kids were getting and the need. So luckily, I just kind of started cold calling some schools, and California and Texas had some spots, but being a Midwest person, I really wanted to stay local, and Basehor Linwood did not have a program in place. I spoke with them about some ideas that I had on revamping how they write their curriculum and so forth, and at first it wasn't going to be a fit, and they called and decided to, I basically kind of sold it and said, give me a chance. And they gave me a chance, and we built it from scratch. And over the 11 years of running the program, I felt like we got great roots of being one of the few high school programs that has a year-round commitment and has certified strength coaches involved, and not just only the head, but assistants. And worked it to include all student athletes, and not just athletes, but every student in our district. And so that was a joy for us to see it grow to all the students and become a piece of the community and find and understand the strength conditioning. And the athletic director who hired me retired, and so I decided to take his shoes, and Coach Wieser has come in year one and helped take it to the next level a little bit. So here's Coach Wieser.
My background, similar in some ways to Coach Schwisow's, also a Midwest guy, originally from Omaha, Nebraska. I went to Emporia State to play football in college, got my degree, and I was going to go work in business. And then I realized that sitting at a desk all day in a suit and tie wasn't going to be a good fit. So I went back to Emporia and started helping out just as a volunteer football coach, and then got hired on as a graduate assistant. And then our strength coach at the time was phasing out of the weight room a little bit. So he handed me the reins on all that stuff and took over football. And then as I got a little bit further along in my career, I realized that we had a need at our university to have a more centralized strength program. So I took over our basketball team, softball, baseball, tennis, soccer. And so worked with the majority of our student athletes there. And it was a great experience. I definitely loved coaching college athletes. But our women's basketball coach at the time actually approached me when Coach Schwisow was transitioning to a different position and asked me if I had ever really been interested in high school coaching. And I wasn't really sure at the time, but I was like, it sounds like a great opportunity. So came in, and when I got the job, I couldn't have been more excited just because of what was in place and the ability that I knew I was going to be able to have to work with these kids year round, having administration that's supportive of what we do, people in the community that come up and talk to you all the time. They see me out, and they know that I'm the strength coach at the high school, and that I work with their kids from 2nd grade to 12th grade. So it's been a great experience, having a lot of fun with it. It's definitely different than coaching college athletes in a lot of regards, but also a lot more rewarding, just in terms of the developmental period that I have with everybody, and the chance that I have to change a lot of habits and reach kids on a different level than I did only having them, anywhere from 2 to 5 years in college.
The long-term program that you guys have is absolutely outstanding, man. Just the idea of being able to be around a student athlete from, what you just said, 2nd grade all the way through 12th grade, not only can leave just a mark on, them physically and what they're doing athleticism wise, but just talk about being an absolute role model for them, for everything in every aspect of their life. And one of the things that, I always really enjoy asking this question is, what is your department's kind of mission? What's your core values? And I know you guys, you're talking about lifetime wellness and all that stuff a little bit. Can you kind of give me the nuts and bolts of what you want your 2nd grader all the way through 12th grader to learn and be able to do by the time they leave Basehor Linwood?
Well, a big part of it when it comes to us on mission statement, and I think what it has been for me from day one is, and I sometimes wish it could be called something different than strength conditioning, but strength conditioning, it sticks well. And my thoughts always, I think people hear strength conditioning and they automatically think of one certain thing. But I think the biggest challenge for a coach is to have your community understand what strength conditioning means to you and to this program. And I think our community really understands, and our kids hear it enough that, one, we're trying to develop confidence, we're trying to develop habits. And these kids they're such at the habit forming stage of their life that if we can get them involved, the sooner the better, and have them enjoy it, the more that they're going to stay involved. And for me, I always took that in the weight room that I wanted every kid. I didn't care if it was just an athlete or not, because I've always said that I'm going to refer to every single person as an athlete, because that's who we are, and finding a home for every kid. So now for me, my role with our district, I'm trying to get to the point where we can get every student in our district, in our school, involved in something. For years it was always using strength conditioning, and to be honest with you, I've always laughed and I said that that's the easiest one to get a kid interested in. It's hard to get a kid pumped up for math or calculus or higher level English or anything like that. It takes a rare person to enjoy that. But, strength conditioning, I think you could, if you're good, you can get a lot of people involved. And so the next step for us here at our school is trying to, okay, if it's not strength conditioning, let's get somebody involved in something else. So I think as a strength conditioning professional, you've got to realize that I think maybe you probably have the holy grail of getting a kid to connect to school at your fingertips. And sometimes people, they make it all about the athletics, which is great, and that's a major piece to it. But you got the holy grail sitting there. So to me, that's always been kind of my mission statement.
Philosophically, Coach Schwisow and I are very similar in a lot of regards. Just kind of building off of what he said, I think of a lot of what we can do in terms of building habits has to do with commitment. So just getting them to buy into something. Whenever we have opt-in programs or different phases of our training that are kind of their voluntary areas, we have them sign commitment letters to signify that, they're buying into the process of having 6 or 7 weeks of training for so many days, and that they're showing the other people involved that, they're going to stick to it. So then when somebody drops out of a program or decides they don't want to do it anymore, you can pull that piece of paper out and say, now I'm going to question what the commitment level is because you signed this and you told me that you were in for it for 6 or 7 weeks, so what's your commitment level on a lot of other things? And I think that's something that I've really enjoyed. And that's a great culture that I walked into, and something that I'm going to continue to work to instill in our kids is just starting what you finish, and we talk about that every day in drills that we do and all that stuff, but the things that you do in your life and when you go through that adversity, do you quit when it gets difficult, or do you figure out a way to push your mind and your body through it so that you can accomplish things that you never thought you could? And something else that I loved walking into was the use of the word can't. We don't allow that in our weight room. And the first couple of times kids walk in, you'll hear that word drop so many times because they don't feel comfortable doing something. They've never attempted it. So we don't allow them to use that word. And it starts kind of becoming a habit, and you can hear other kids in the class or out on the field or whatever we're doing, they'll call people out and say that we don't use that word. That's not how we do things. You need to try something before you think that you're not able to do it, and at least give the effort. And I talk about that when kids are going to a job interview. And just because you walk into a job interview and you think somebody is more qualified than you, you're just going to walk in there and not try for the interview and never get the job? Or are you going to at least go in there and give it a shot, and maybe you have something they don't? So there's so many other things we can do. Everybody always wants to get everybody bigger, faster, stronger, and that's great. And that's part of the goal, but there's so many other things that we're able to obtain by having the environment that we have and having the culture that we built at our school and our district.
I tell you, the thing that I noticed the most, the couple times that I've got to visit and just kind of see how things run, is just the amount of kids that do exactly what you say, where they're invested in that culture and they'll call other kids out. And that's what I love. Like I saw it there too. And your example of not using the word can't and kids calling other people out, like that gets me pumped up. The other thing that last little section did was that really challenged me, man. The commitment letters, the things talking about, hey, if we're committed in the weight room, great, but what about all the other areas of your life? I don't know if I've been doing that well enough, and I really like kind of the direction that you guys are taking that, because it makes sense. This is something we want to make a total person, not just that awesome athlete. So I really appreciate both your guys' perspectives on that. The other thing that I really want to hear about, and it's kind of the namesake of this podcast, is what's really separating you guys. What's making the big time where you're at. What does that look like for you guys? Because I tell you, if I would think of a program, yours is like the epitome of making the big time where you're at. It's like a college level program at a high school. Can you kind of walk me through maybe some of the things that you really think make Basehor Linwood stand out, or maybe something that you're just like, well, this is our norm, and we didn't even know it was something that just makes us better?
When you ask that, I've just seen a lot of, in regards to strength conditioning, you feel people feel like they have to have certain things, or, I got to have this to be able to run a program, or, I need this equipment, I need that. And I think that's the thing that's the biggest loss sometimes on coaches, because we're getting to a time right now with strength conditioning where it's like, even now at high school, it's keep up with the Joneses. And it's, well, look at this guy's facility, look what they have, look at this facility compared to ours. I always like showing those facilities to our kids, because we take a lot of pride in what we have, and I think we have a beautiful and a great setup. But we always say that doesn't mean anything. We're going to work harder than the other people. And then you hear stories like I talked to my old boss, Dr. Ivy, about a month ago, and he goes, I went to the New Orleans Saints, and they had one foam roller with the New Orleans Saints. And he's like, Drew Brees wants a foam roller. No one else gets a foam roller. So I'm sitting there going, I was like, we have more foam rollers than the New Orleans Saints. So that's one thing that I just feel gets lost sometimes. But as far as, I think for us, the foundation was what helps us is it's become a community piece, and it never gets stagnant for the kids because they constantly are seeing a growth. And I think it can be just human nature is people want to speed up the process sometimes. And so, for us, like, working backwards is, we want our kids to be able to get to level 4. When you're in high school, we have 4 levels: level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. I always joke with our kids that we have a level 5, but I've never had anyone make it there. And so I think they believe me, but I really don't have a level 5, but maybe one day we'll have to make a level 5, but they believe that. But level 1, you're not going to lift a weight until you do certain things sound fundamentally. And that's your freshman year. So then the next step is, what are you doing with the kids in middle school? So what are your middle school teachers doing? What do you do when you have them in the middle school phase? Coach Wieser has taken on and tackled this summer where, what are we doing? And let's go 2nd through 5th grade. That's the other piece with culture is you start getting people that think, hey, I'm going to send my kid to a strength conditioning coach. And no, you don't need to. We've got the sound, we've got the place right here. And everything's going to be part of the same philosophy and of the same system. And yeah, it's going to be a 10-year process, but then it's teaching them when they're 18 and they're done with us, and we're done with them in some ways, that guess what? They've got to go figure out what their level 5 is, or what their next step is, or if they do a college sport where they're going to go in, that we want them to be underwhelmed and not overwhelmed by anything that's given to them.
I think something that really sets us apart is the way that we challenge our kids and how we hold them accountable. There was a high standard when I walked in, and I think of myself as kind of a stubborn old school guy. My high school coach was a 10 sets of 10, work till you drop kind of guy. So when I started out, I was like, that's going to be a great idea. And then as I got through and got more well-versed in the profession, started to learn how to train different athletes and how to train different populations, then I started figuring out a little bit more of those triggers. But for me, it's just all about keeping that consistency and not allowing kids to have one day where everything is on point and it's great and there's enthusiasm and there's energy, and the next day it's just, it's like they're going in a funeral procession. So keeping that consistency just in what we do, the tempo that we work at, challenging them every day, whether it be to push themselves on a lift, to go through a different type of training, trying to give them different modalities to work on, just so they get something to kind of broaden their horizons, I guess. But just having the buy-in at all levels, and Coach already hit on it, but, one of the first weeks I was in this new position last summer, I had our middle school coach who does PE and works with them on, training them in the fundamentals of the weight room, come up and ask me what I wanted him to do with middle school kids. So being able to start them and having the same things reinforced and the same coaching cues and the same philosophy, from the time they enter 6th grade all the way until I get them in our building is huge. But it's a fundamental process that they've learned to follow, and that I'm just continuing to harp on them about. And, Coach said we want them to be underwhelmed, not overwhelmed, when they go to a college program. And I've had several kids who've gone to their colleges just in the last year, came back from stuff in the summer and told me that they thought what we did was harder last summer, or kids that have gone to other high schools and said, I really liked what we did. I feel like I'm not working as hard. And I'm like, well, everybody's program is good in its own way. I'm like, it's just something where we challenged you because we had a different standard. And I think that's what has made this school so successful, and something I'm going to really continue to try and build on in my time here at the school.
I think the things that you guys hit on there, it just really is a testament to everything that you guys are doing and the buy-in that you're getting. And one of the things I kind of want to ask about is how do you continue that buy-in? And I know you mentioned a couple things about that. And I want to be a little bit more specific and dig in there. And then also maybe just how you develop leaders, and so that it's not just you guys doing all of the work, but also the leaders of each of your sessions or your grades or whatever it is. What are you doing to develop those type of people too? So the next thing with that, if you want to flow right into it, is maybe talking about that culture overall too.
One thing that I've always tried to do is, or at least for me, and it's a tough thing, is we don't do team-based training because our classes are mixed gender. It's level. We don't have a male female. We don't have a football session. We don't do a 0 hour. And I've always felt, even with our football coach when he came in, I said, I feel bad. I said, because I think maybe if they were all in here together, then maybe it could be a little bit different. But I also think that there's a lot of positives behind that when you've got kids across the board that may be a non-athlete out working a kid, or it might be a female in that group working and pushing the envelope, So for us and for me personally, it was always, that was one of the main, goals, was to make sure that we continued to have that atmosphere, that environment where we call it the ring the bell mentality, where we celebrate something you've never done before. I always joke with kids that we have a bell in our weight room. We do it when you PR, but if a kid came in and I've been talking to that kid socially about a math grade that I saw down and he did good on a math test, I'd yell at the kid and go tell him to ring the bell, and they look at you funny, like, no, you've never done that before. Go ring the dang bell. That's what life is about, those little accomplishments every day. And if we can hang our hat on those, that's how you're going to get better.
Something that I've seen just in my first year in the high school setting are some of the kids that are behavioral issues in other classes that other teachers struggle with. And, a lot of times they assume that the strength conditioning environment is going to be the best one for them, which I would probably agree that it is, just in terms of what you do in the class and you're moving around and you're active and you're going off steam. But something cool that I found was just a couple of those kids that there was a lot of negative feedback on in many cases were kids that I brought in and just worked on establishing relationships with. And, after a couple of weeks of them gaining that trust and buying in, I was teaching and how I coached, and, I didn't coach them any different. I didn't talk any nicer to them to, maintain that behavior. I said, this is how we're going to do things. And if you do it that way, then you're going to enjoy this class and it's going to be fun for you. And I saw some of those kids who were a little rough around the edges the first couple of weeks start buying into it. And then those were the same kids that, like we said earlier, when we had somebody who was saying the word can't. These kids in the first couple of weeks that were that person, all of a sudden they're the person calling them out. Or they're the one who's telling somebody that they only did 7 reps when they had 8. So it's something that, there's those intangibles in kids, and sometimes their leadership qualities are channeled in the wrong way. So being able to put them in this environment and have them with athletes and non-athletes and kids that are excellent in debate and in the band and the best football player, best volleyball player, whatever, having everybody train together allows them to come out of their shell a little bit. And I think they can feed off of some of those people that are in the more positive leadership roles, those people who have been on teams and know how to work together. They start picking up those qualities, and you start seeing those in them. You start seeing it in the classroom with them, behavior improves, they start buying into it. And I got a couple of those kids to come out for powerlifting, and one of them was really successful. I think he got 3rd overall in the state. So, I mean, that was somebody who had never done it and had a lot of issues in other situations. And this was just an environment where he grew tremendously and found something to latch on to, which for me is, I mean, there's not a bigger victory for a high school teacher than finding something that a kid can latch on to and work hard in the classroom so they can stay eligible, so they can participate in it, and something they're going to be on time and accountable for, and take care of all that little stuff just so they can do what they really enjoy doing.
You mentioned there at the end a little bit about your guys' powerlifting team. And, for anybody around the area, around the Kansas City area, they know how successful that you guys have been within that program. But then I've heard multiple times from you guys just the amount of success that you find in the students, just being able to use that and push that into other areas of their life. And that becomes such a big thing. If I was a coach, or if there's coaches around the nation that want to learn how to get that started, and maybe it's not going on in their state at all, what would be some of the steps that you guys would take to get that rolling?
And just piggyback on what Coach just said, he talked about the relationship piece, and it's funny, the young man that he talked about, I took this year and I went to administrative role, and that kid had some issues in some classes as just a teenage kid and so forth, and it's having something that they attach to. With him as powerlifting, jokes aside, we got the kid to be able to wear sleeves, because he would wear sleeveless shirts into school, and it was like, come on, man, you got to put some sleeves on. But you can't do that. You can't discipline or change a kid without a relationship. But back to your question, and you stated about powerlifting, I think powerlifting to me is just like I said earlier with strength and conditioning, where people don't understand it. You have to define it. And what does strength and conditioning mean to you? What does powerlifting mean to you? To me, I never ever trained a kid to be a powerlifter. That had nothing to do with it. Powerlifting for me came about when I started the program 11 years ago, and I got a flyer from a school, and I sat there and I said, you know what? I said, let's go to that, because, in Kansas or our size school, you've got basketball players, you've got wrestlers, and we have a handful of swimmers, and that's male. And then the only girls sport offered in the winter is basketball. So what are all of those kids doing? Signing a 18-week commitment letter is not an acceptable thing. You've got to train these kids that are going to go and be a softball player, a track athlete, whatever it is in your spring sport. And so we went and took a group to that meet, and I found out how quickly that could be a great tool. And so we created it as a club, did the same thing with the commitment letter. It's grown enough for us with 150 plus members on the team that it's a letter sport. And what I've seen on our end in the state of Kansas is I think it's becoming more where we're pushing that envelope of not necessarily being sanctioned, because I know South Carolina sanctions it, Texas sanctions it. There's a few states that have sanctioned powerlifting, like a football championship, but in Kansas, it's coaches ran. It serves a big purpose for us. It's a major fundraiser for our program. Last year we had over 52 schools and 900 plus competitors in our powerlifting meet. And what we have seen in Kansas is a lot of the coaches, not only do they see it as a fundraiser, but they also see it as a great opportunity for their kids to be involved in something in the winter, and just that next step of confidence. And so you basically, what we're seeing in Kansas is we're seeing there's meets every weekend, and there's enough to go across that people don't have to travel great distances. They can figure out where they want to go, and they can work and fit it in. Now, the hard part for a lot of strength coaches is that's time consuming. Do you get paid to do that? But if we're sitting here and this is a podcast where it's not just Midwest or anything like that, and you're in other states, I would highly suggest do some research and look into putting your first one on, because our first one we ever hosted was about 150 kids, and we did it in one gym, and now we, like I said, 900 plus kids, and we ran 9 squat racks, 9 bench presses, 9 hang clean stations, and we used a weight room, 2 gyms, and a mezzanine to house the whole thing. And we're still done by 2:00. So it's worth it.
I would say, as somebody starting the program, and I had zero powerlifting background coming into this, so I think there are some question marks. I basically, when I walked in, from all the parents, the first powerlifting meeting, from people in the school, when I walked in, and there's a decade plus worth of banners hanging in our weight room, they're like, hey, don't come in and mess this up. So good words of encouragement coming right in the door. Luckily for me, I had enough background in college athletics and coaching that, I realized that past successes are only as good as what you can do the next year. So when it came to just continuing to try and build our program to continue to, I guess, just be successful, be at the level that it has been, is really kind of recruiting the oddball athlete. And I think that's what maybe a lot of schools, if they don't have the program, may overlook, because it's not going to be your biggest, baddest dude who walks in the room is going to be your best power lifter. Our lower weight classes are some of the most successful across the board, male and female. And I've been trying to recruit girls from our dance team because I've had them in class, and I think they'll be awesome power lifters. So continuing to work on just those people who may not think of it, as a competitive thing for them, but, realizing, again, like Coach Schwisow said, is I'm not trying to train bodybuilders, and I'm not making big, bulky, slow, stiff athletes. We're training all around. We work on speed, we work on agility, and then there's obviously the lifting piece, but it's just a great opportunity for some of these kids to get in and compete at something different. And you have that individual success, which is great, but you're also working towards that team goal of winning your meet or winning your state or your region or whatever it may be. So just sell the program as a tool to include a ton of kids. Our team is about 16% of our total student population. So, having that is huge. And those are people that don't pick up a ball or racket, put on any kind of uniform. All they do is show up and we lift heavy weights, and it's great, and they enjoy that. And it's fun coaching it because I have kids from so many different backgrounds. So it needs to be sold in the proper way if you're starting from scratch or if you're trying to build something. I think it needs to be well-rounded and not just come in and say we're going to bench, squat, and clean, and that's all we're going to do, because that's not going to be a big selling point for somebody who's really good at another sport. Maybe if they just want to lift weights, maybe they'll just come in and, have a weights class, or they'll do something before school or an off-season program or go somewhere in the private sector. So you have to make it something where you're selling the competition part of it as well as building, an overall kind of repertoire of skills that you can get from the kind of training that we do with our team.
I love that, man. You guys that's awesome stuff. And I think the biggest thing that I'm going to be working on is trying to get that thing rolling up this way. And then maybe a few of the other things that you mentioned, just you give me a whole list of things I'm writing down right now, which is awesome. Thanks, guys. So one of the things that you guys mentioned a little bit was how it was a great fundraiser too, and not to take away from the culture and all these other things, but also just to keep a strength and conditioning department rolling and to offer the things that you need to offer. You need some sort of budget, and you might get a budget from the school. But what I really want to know is, how do you get maybe some of the additional things, or how do you guys do some of the things that you need to do? Like your camp numbers, I know, are crazy during the summer. And then you just talked about a meet that had 900 and some people at it. How do you get by fundraising? What's that look like? And then also, like when you are getting all that fundraising and all that type of stuff, what are the things that you focus on, maybe improving at your guys' place?
Well, and I'll start with that just because, and in year one, I know Coach Wieser, he joked and he said, well, it looks like my budget here is bigger than I had at the collegiate level. I think it's real important, at least the philosophy I always held, was make sure your fundraising has a purpose at the beginning. And for me, it was, I don't know, maybe it's also the way I parent, because I don't want the kids to walk in and have all this nice stuff handed to them right away. You kind of want it to be a big thing. You want it to be a big deal. So, like, even for us, we bought 6 weight racks off a school that wasn't going to use them anymore, and they're old and beat up. But to our kids, it was like, oh crap, sorry, oh crud, we got 4 more stations. There's so much more room for activities now, and they were excited, and they didn't need the brand new thing or anything like that. So I think for me at the end, a majority of the fundraising was for me to be able to hit their extrinsic motivation, because, that everybody's intrinsically and extrinsically motivated, but even to a teenager or any kid, it's as simple as, hell, the hardest worker today, I'm going to give you a free chocolate milk, or here's a water bottle, or if you've done this, you complete this, and we've used a lot of shirts, just like a lot of people have done, but be able to have those incentives in place, especially for some of your students that maybe financially, we don't give you a shirt, we don't ever give you anything, you earn it, and that hits home with a lot of kids. And so even in our summer program, we just started charging for that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But everything that we take in is to support the whole program. So for the head coach, the assistant coach, our intern program that we have run through here, the shirts, our Beast Feast at the end of summer, these things that we do as motivation, that's all self-funding. But we also, just because you sign up and pay for the program, it's not like, hey, I signed up for a camp, I get a shirt. You still need to, and we've raised the expectation every summer, you still got to make it to 90%. There's 100%. Yeah, I'm sorry, we made it. If you don't make it to 100% of the workouts, you don't make it to all 28, you don't get the shirt, And so, and that's just trying to remove the, I guess, I paid, I get to play attitude a little bit. So for us, our fundraising now is to make the bigger changes to the room that we need, because right now, and Coach Wieser, I asked him all year long as his AD, like, do you need anything? Do you need anything? And it's like, no. And I was like, well, that made me feel good that I was able to leave him a room that he didn't walk in and go, what the hell, how'd this guy get anything done? He didn't even have this, And right. So that was good. And so now it's, for us, we've taken the approach that we are trying to reach the entire student body. So now it's not only with a weight room, but what can we do for our Bobcat brand, everything that we're doing to extend it to the entire school and bring it in.
For the fundraising side, for me, what we raise in the summer program is great, and it helps out a lot of the things that we get to do in our district, even outside of strength conditioning. And then we'll do a lift-a-thon. That's kind of our first little mock meet for powerlifting. That brings in a little bit of money, and it gives our kids exposure. We bring back alumni, and people from the community come in and teach our kids who haven't competed at a meet how they'll be judged. Just kind of gives us a sense of where we're at as a team. But it's something where we have, the kids take out the donation cards, and people can pledge so much per pound, or they can, just give a flat amount. So that's something that helps kind of refill the budget, again, for, buying shirts or getting stuff. We have a Gatorade cooler where we have different items that, we'll buy in bulk and then sell the kids cheaper than they can get at Walmart or the gas station, just to provide some nutritional stuff for them. But I'm really a minimalist when it comes to things. And the glitz and the glamour for me, I think, takes away from a lot of what I really want to get done. And I told our kids, actually, I told one of our groups today, because they left things messy after their session. And I was like, I'll rope the room off and I'll show you what it was like when you didn't have this building and it used to be back in the school, because you're going to appreciate the things we have. And if you're dropping dumbbells and you're not setting bars down quietly and you're not taking care of things, then you're not going to have them. And I'll take the most minimalistic approach that you want me to do for you guys to respect this room and what you have here, because a lot of them have never seen anything different. They don't know what the old weight room looks like. They just know that we have this beautiful facility. And I want them to know that there's some roots to it, and that there was a lot of things that had to come about for it to get done. But, the fundraising piece is great to maintain. And then when we do want to make any changes, it's not something where I have to go out and battle to get it done and go through 1,000 different channels of red tape. It's just, we have it available. So if I need to go buy new medicine balls, it's not a problem. I need to go buy some new barbells, not a problem. So it's an awesome resource, and definitely something that I've enjoyed since I took over this position.
So with all the things that you guys have rolling, right? You've got things going in the right direction, at least from an outsider's perspective. And man, I tell you, we all run into hurdles. We've got some sort of struggle we got going on. What is the toughest hurdle that you guys have in front of you, and what are you doing to kind of overcome that obstacle?
The biggest thing for me, just from a general strength conditioning perspective, I guess twofold is kind of number one is getting kids to stay latched on to working out with their teams and keeping that a priority, because there's so many club teams that pop up and you get a lot of outside entities that say, hey, we're going to work with your club team. You can train here. You can do this. So it's just keeping kids involved and knowing how important it is for them to be around with their high school teammates, even though they may spend all summer playing AAU basketball or select softball or whatever it is. Staying on board with that and just letting them know that, you know, their best interests are what we're trying to get after. And we're here to make them the best softball player, best basketball player we can, but there's not going to be a better environment for them to go into than to challenge themselves with their peers, with their teammates, with other sports, all that stuff. And then I think there's always struggles, and it doesn't really matter what you're doing in terms of just activity level with kids, and it's getting them to invest the time and realize that the time commitment that you really have to allot to get better doesn't mean that you have to be out doing something for 15 hours a day and training like that. I mean, we have hour and 15 to hour and 20 minute long sessions 4 days a week in the summer. And I think sometimes you get these kids who would rather sit on the couch and play video games and they want to sleep, you know, and it's just selling them, you know, the product that they're going to get out of what they're going to get from our program, and trusting the process that, you know, they're going to buy into it. And sometimes you don't have results after the first few weeks. And if you don't stay committed, then you're not going to achieve what you really want. But if you buy in and you see those steps as you progress, and you see the results, and you start seeing change in your body, and you start feeling better when you're just out in your general life, you know, getting those habits changed can be a little bit of a challenge. And that was my big thing when I came in from college to high school, was just, you know, it was a voluntary, mandatory thing in the summer for us. And it was a lot of things where, you know, we had a little bit of a hold on the athletes, and they had to be there. So now it's got to be really instilling that commitment piece with the kids now, and getting them to stay bought in and realize how important it is to be in this setting with this group, you know, with the program that we use, and knowing that it's something that's going to be really beneficial for them in the long run.
I would say the biggest hurdle for me, at least when I was running the program, was the kids were so bought in and they believed in it, but I was always trying to basically coax them of how to take it to the next point. And what Coach said there too was always the biggest hurdle. And what was frustrating to me is when the teams figured it out and they started doing some individual things and team-led stuff, those were the state championship teams. Those are the most successful teams we've had in the school. And the hardest part as a coach is you sit there and go, man, we've got this great group. And they, like a great example for me was our soccer team that lost on a penalty kick or in the state championship. But that team, every single game day, they came in, all 26 kids on the varsity, a captain in every rack, and I posted, we had some alternating game day specific soccer drills that I wanted them to do, and they would do it for 30 minutes. I set them up, I'd go run off season, and the seniors ran it. And then I'd come in at the end of 30 minutes, meet with them real quick, but it was team driven. And I talked all the time to the underclassmen that this right here is one of the main reasons you guys are the top team in the state. And then what happens the next year? It kind of falls by the wayside. We've had the same thing. And so that was always the biggest challenge for me, is when you have, and we're a public high school, so it's all about culture, community, but when you've seen the successful groups, but then the group that comes in after them didn't harness basically the special recipe, you know? They start with the individual, and I think that's the biggest challenge. Probably any coach at any level, is this is why they won. Don't lose sight of this.
Yeah, man, I tell you, it's tough. You figure, man, I got this thing rolling in some way, and the team takes it and runs with it, and they make it theirs, and things just feel like they're clicking, and then the following year, maybe the leadership turns over and that type of stuff, and it just looks different. It feels different, and it's really tough to continue that culture of excellence for a long, sustained time. And I really think that. I think you hit that right on the head, and I'm happy that you guys are attacking those struggles head on and being an awesome, solution to the problem that you guys have to deal with. The other thing that I know is interesting with you guys, and this could be a whole conversation on its own. But with your summer training and maybe even throughout your school year, you're getting interns in there, probably somewhere between 10 and 15 interns, and you are being able to invest in those students at the collegiate level, or maybe even some people that are older than that, so that they can go and impact more people. What is a way that you kind of got that intern program started? Maybe the way that you manage them, develop them, and then how you evaluate them as you go.
The intern program for us in the summer kicked off with, out of necessity. We needed the help, and I needed free help, and we wanted to have a culture of winning. So it was me talking to those kids that had graduated, developing the relationships, keeping the relationships with the graduates, and finding those graduates that wanted to become teachers, coaches, or whatever, and give them that experience in the weight room. And then it grew to us where we would do 4 full-time interns, and they got a stipend, or if there's an intern needing college credit. So it initially started for us with Basehor Linwood graduates, but over time, having met with Dr. Fry at KU and just other resources, or Coach Quinlan at Northwest, and it's become a crossover, and now with Coach Wieser with his Emporia State background, that of our full-time interns, only one of them this summer is actually a Basehor Linwood graduate. One's a fiance of a graduate, one was a KU assistant, a couple of, so it's grown in a positive to where we're getting outside input as well, and it's now more full-time positions, and then in the classroom during the semesters, starting to have more and more students that see strength conditioning as a profession. So we've got kids that are, one kid with the New York Jets and a kid with the Arkansas State right now, and when they're back, they come in and they get to share their stories. And I think that's probably that's one of the most successful things for a weight room. And I saw it last night. We have a kid that's trying to make it in the NFL right now at the San Diego Chargers, and he was on the track last night during a football camp, and he was running with one of our 5th graders, and that gets lost in communities, especially we're a metro area. We're starting to lose our boundaries a little bit and get swallowed up by becoming a metropolitan area, not necessarily because we're still rural, but we're trying to harness that. And so I think that intern for us is probably one of the biggest grasps of build that, because with the number of kids coming through in the weight room, an intern needs to speak to at least 10 different kids every session. And if you can get 10 people speaking to 10 different kids every session, you just talk to every 100. And you as the head strength coach, you don't need to take that burden on. And I think Coach Wieser last summer, in his first summer, he felt that burden a little bit, and I had to tell him, and it was understood. I said, you gotta take the summer to sit back a little bit and let other people do some of the talking, because one of the perks of, one of the negatives of running a year-round program is these kids have to listen to you all year long. And so you maybe need to let them listen to somebody else, or you're going to get the daddy syndrome where they don't listen to you because you're the dad,
I think it's been great for me to work with some of the graduates. When I came in last May, we kind of had our intern staff lined up, and it was a few more kids from the school. But that gave me a great resource to get to know, what the culture was from some people that were already out of high school and could tell me, the things that they really enjoyed or were challenged by. So it's a huge relationship building piece to maintain with those kids that graduate, that come back for the summer and want them to do, like Coach said, for college credits, or if they need, if they can get on the stipend, something like that. But the variety of knowledge that you can bring in, we have coaches that are currently playing collegiate sports. We have people that played college sports. Our coach that was at KU worked with their men's basketball team. So I had him take our kids through mobility drills for a couple weeks. And I was like, this guy worked with the KU basketball team. And all of a sudden the things that he was doing were just amazing. And I could have told him the same thing, but it doesn't always have the same kind of, power behind it as when I say, hey, this is what KU men's basketball does. And all of a sudden they're buying into it a little bit more. So everybody can bring a little bit different variety of knowledge and skills. And I limit them a little bit the first week of the summer to kind of see how they respond, and I'll give them tasks more and more and delegate more important things to them as we go along, and I see what their capabilities are and what their strengths are. And then I'll let them, work with a station of middle school kids, or they're going to run, this part of what we're doing during our workout, or they're going to focus on the beginning lifters. When I have injured athletes or injured students, I'll usually put one of my interns with them and say, this is the injury that we're facing, or these are the restrictions. This is what I've given them. I want you to build on another 10 to 12 things for them to do, or come up with some alternate exercises. So it takes a lot of the heat off of me of having to alter, 50 sheets during the day with somebody who's got a banged up shoulder or knee. But it also gives those interns a chance to do a little bit of alternate programming, because if you get everything set in stone and you have no adaptability, it makes it really tough when you have somebody who comes in with a weird situation. You have no idea how to react. And then last summer I didn't do it, but this summer I'm going to actually take them through kind of an exit interview, just to talk to them about what I think their strengths and weaknesses are, ask them to evaluate me and my program a little bit. And I've already asked them to give me feedback, and we've done some different things, and I've taken ideas from them, because I'm not always around to talk to everybody and see everybody. Sometimes we'll have a group on the field while I'm in the weight room. So it can be a challenge to try and be two places at once. So if you have people that are out there that are capable of running what you want them to do, or have the knowledge of being able to put their own sugar on top of it, it makes things more interesting for the kids. And it adds a little more variety to your program, makes you a better coach.
And back on that with the intern, we try to do as much as we can to make it a educational setting too, so to get their feedback and give them that opportunity to give input and make it an instructional setting. And then, growing our program with Coach Quinlan over the years at Northwest Missouri, and that's how you and I met, was on an intern swap, because you want to show that you can work with kids at all levels and at different places. And sometimes, and I'm an advocate of it, and I'm just saying high school is the place to be when it comes to making huge impacts on people. And so hopefully being able to try to have that grow where we can get those relationships, and if there's a student in a classroom at KU, it passes on and we get another kid from there, and hopefully it becomes that self-feeder.
Well, just so that our listeners know, man, the reason why I ever learned about Basehor Linwood and got to really understand how things are starting to work, and just the investment that Coach Schwisow has put in, and now Coach Wieser, is that the intern swap at Northwest Missouri State University, like Coach said, with Joe Quinlan, and then being able to take Coach Schwisow and Coach Wieser's interns and send them up so they can see what the collegiate aspect looks at the Division II level, and then come back and be able to share that with the rest of everybody else. It was such a great learning experience. And I encourage anybody that's looking into an intern program to reach out to Coach Schwisow, to Coach Wieser, and Coach Joe Quinlan at Northwest Missouri State. And they'll give you some great ideas to how to set it up and what it should look like over the years. The thing that we really haven't even got to, what your training philosophy is, and all these different things that go into how you guys program. But I'm loving where all this is going. So one of my questions before we start to wrap this up is what are you learning on, and what are you improving on over this next year? What's something that you look for to improve upon? And then kind of just to put the two questions together, what's your vision for the department in the next 5 years? So first question, what is something that you're improving upon, you want to learn more about, whatever it is? And the second question is, what is your vision for your department in the next 5 years?
Well, as this is my first year as a teacher, it's a little bit different when you're trying to throw more of the educational pieces in. We have 85-minute class blocks, so I've never had that much time to work with my athletes. So it's been great for me, but my big struggle was knowing how to piece together all the different elements of what I wanted them to learn in a structure. And, talking to Coach Schwisow, he's like, you got to chunk it. So, I've learned more as I've gone along, and my second semester was a lot more smooth, and I think this summer has been really good, but it's just putting bits and pieces together to keep their attention. So whether you're working on linear speed that day, whether you want to work on plyometrics, your weight training piece, your competition piece, any kind of recovery, is just trying to piece together a program that can keep people locked in for 85 minutes and get all the skills taught and practiced and reviewed in that time, but also making it something that's fun and challenging for the kids. Because getting them in there and just having them lift for that long, or saying we're going to do 20 minutes of running and we're going to do 40 minutes of lifting and 10 minutes of recovery and then you go change. And that stuff doesn't always work out. So I've had to adapt a lot of my tactics to make sure that I'm putting different pieces together and scheduling it out. So we spend 4 to 5 weeks on, we're working on more of our lateral movement, or we're going to go unilateral lifting here. We're going to flip-flop our program just to shock and awe your body a little bit on the programming side. And then also trying to add in more just the nutrition and wellness piece, because the people that are in my class or our strength conditioning program are going to come up and ask me, should I be eating this? Should I take this supplement? Is this good for me? Is this protein better than this protein? So all that different stuff, and trying to teach them that without overwhelming them with information. And Coach Schwisow kind of gave me a hard time. He came and observed my class once, and I stood up there and sounded like I was giving a scientific lecture. And it was a wealth of information. It was all good. But, you look out into the class and you have a couple people that are engaged and you have some people that are glossed over. So learning how and when to present that information so they're getting the things that they need, so that at this time in their life they can maximize that development and get the most out of it. And just continuing to challenge them every day to be better has been not a struggle, but just a constant thing I have to remind myself of, especially at this age, and finding different ways to motivate them, whether it be extrinsic motivation or just trying to kind of find out what buttons I have to push for them. And then in 5 years, I'm just going to continue to try to grow this program as much as I can, and keep getting our community more and more bought in. As our community grows, I'm going to have a ton of new people moving into our district that have no idea. And I'm sure they'll hear good things when they move in, and all the new students we add, everybody always has great things to say, but you're adding a ton of kids and parents and grandparents and guardians and everybody else into the fold and getting them bought into the culture. And then Coach hit on as well, we added 2nd through 5th grade training in the summer. And at some point I'll probably add kindergarten and 1st grade when I feel like I have a well laid out plan to maximize what I can get out of that age group, as far as having them in for a length of time to keep them locked in and focused, and also making sure that we're getting good habits instilled with them, teaching them how to move, how to work, how to finish, how to fight through when they get tired, and all that stuff that's just going to make them better as they continue through the program up until when I get them into high school.
For me, I'm an administrative role, but I'll say probably the thing for me, and I think it hits all coaches, and I've worked this year, is because I know being out of the room, the biggest piece that I've been struggling with was keeping that relationship with kids and that buy-in, because they're not going to see me as a teacher anymore, and I'm in a different role. But the way I attack that is, I don't know, I try to learn something about a kid that has nothing to do with their sport, their interest, or anything like that. And having that piece can always be a go-to. So it doesn't have to be to your football player, your basketball player. They're going to say that, but there's more to them than that. And so that's probably my biggest goal. And then it's been fun for me to sit here now and hear Coach Wieser talk about going to kindergarten, first grade. That just makes me, I'm going to challenge him, and we're going to start doing some womb training here before we know it.
That's the next big thing I heard.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
We could write a book and start something new.
Yeah.
Yes, no doubt.
Yep.
That's good. So the thing that I want to kind of learn and always get the coaches that I interview on this show to get to tell me is kind of where they stick their nose at to continue to learn. Like what are your guys' resources, your go-to developmental stuff where you're just like, okay, when I want to get better at, X, Y, or Z, let's say, specifically programming or anything involved in your job. What are the resources that you like to use so that our listeners can maybe start checking those out?
To be really honest, the best things that I've picked up have just been in conversations with coaches, sitting in on clinics, and just taking bits and pieces of what they do and making it fit what I want to do with my program. I can't really say that I'm a real bookworm when it comes to all that because I'm not a huge scientist. So, when I want to read into things, I want to talk to somebody and I want to know exactly how the practical application works. I don't want to thumb through a book and pick out 50 things that I think are great, but I don't know the proper way to institute them. I don't know how they're really going to function in my program. So I'm more of a face-to-face guy. I learned a ton from Coach Schwisow, honestly, just from the things that he's done developmentally that I really wish I would have known when I was working with college athletes because I think it would help them out a great deal. But I try and plug more resources, just person-to-person kind of things, like I said, because I want to know how it's done. I don't want to just read about it. I want to know the practical applications, and I want to see, if I need it demonstrated, I'd like to do that instead of having to make 37 phone calls to get the answer I want. It's better just for me just to do it in person.
Awesome.
I'm the same way. There's books that I enjoy, and I find myself I sit there and I've got a John Gordon book called The Energy Bus. It's been sitting on my shelf for a year, and I was like, well, I need to read that. And I was like, well, I'm not really following the title because there's not a lot of energy. I feel like I don't know. Sometimes I'd rather be doing it than reading, but I like to follow. Try to see what people are doing on Twitter and just going and speaking with people like stuff like this, like we're talking, and even for me in a new profession, it serves as motivation. When I hear someone doing something that I'm not doing or something that I think would be good for our kids, it ticks me off a little bit, and then I get mad at myself and I make sure that I implement it. And I think that's what keeps me going.
That's a feeling I have right now, Coach.
Well, I think that's what serves as motivation. Is I just took a new job, and one reason I did that is because I wanted to see someone come in here and take this further, and then I wanted to take on a new challenge, and things pop up, and I get mad at myself, but then I'm like, okay, I'm still at year one, but I can't keep using that. Oh, it's my first year excuse, because no, I'm a former strength coach now, but at heart, I'm still going to be that way because that's how I'm going to be an AD. I'm going to do things the same way I did when I was a strength coach.
Both your guys' stuff it's awesome. Just to kind of wrap this thing up, and I know there's so much more. You guys have a wealth of information. We do the finisher, and it's 5 quick questions that you guys can just throw the answers out there. We'll ask the question, both you guys will answer, and then we'll just move right on to the next one. Favorite office snack for each one of you guys?
Snickers.
Snickers? Peanuts. Snickers and peanuts.
I'm honest.
I just don't put Snickers in my office because I'll eat them.
Great. How about caffeine source? What's your favorite go-to caffeine source?
Black coffee.
Blacker coffee.
I see the competition right now. This is good. Favorite workout playlist, but for you guys, not for the athletes, for you. What's your go-to mix?
We always play what I like anyway. Mine kind of depends on the day. I don't know. Sometimes I like a little screamo rock. Sometimes it might go some 90s rap. Just you get to feel. It depends on if you've got a bad day or a good day.
I'll find myself in country, but I find myself more and more. I have a 7-year-old son, and he's got a playlist, and it's Ty's playlist. And I don't know what it is, man, but he likes his Disturbed. He likes his Avenged Sevenfold, you know. So sometimes I have to rock out with my 7-year-old and go a little mosh pit with him.
Dang, he does like that rock. That's good. All right, so you guys have 15 minutes to train yourself. It's 15 minutes. You're maybe between a class or something, and that's the only time you got during the day. What are you doing?
Some form of HIIT training, something to try to spike my, a full body. I'll probably try to implement something with, 10 squats, 10 pulls, push pulls, and 30 seconds of high knees, and just probably some type of HIIT movement.
I would probably do the same. I learned how to get a lot of those lunch break workouts in. I was on a little bit tighter schedule, so I'm all about just trying to get in and out as fast as I can. I got a little bit of a short attention span, so I try not to linger too much. I'm not much of a sit around gym, stare at myself and curl guy.
All right, last question here. Small school strength coach who is killing it and deserves a shout out.
We both thought about this a little bit, and just being locally, I think Brian King at DeSoto, which is a school that is going to be in our new league. I met Brian years ago, and I think a testament to him is he went to the high school as a strength coach, and then they needed a football coach, and he took the football position, and I think he stayed true to his word that he said, I'll become a football coach, but I'm still going to be the strength coach here first. And so I think here in a school or a young guy to make a commitment like that speaks testaments to the type of people we want in this profession. That, and I didn't say it earlier, strength coach at the high school level is the assistant coach for everybody else. And that's what needs to happen.
I was just going to second that. I think Coach King does a great job. And we talked at a clinic in May about how he was going to try to extend his program to reach those younger levels too. I think he does an awesome job. And it is a big thing to separate being that football coach from just a weight room guy. That alienates a lot of people, and it's important to make sure that you're getting everybody involved, everybody included, and making an environment where everybody thrives, just like any football player would, regardless of what you coach or what you participate in. You should all be working towards the same kind of goals.
Man, guys, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come on the show, give all that information, share your experience, and just invest in the strength and conditioning community. I also wanted to let everybody else know that because of what I saw when I went to Basehor Linwood, and because of the way Coach Schwisow had reached out, that's the reason why I wanted to be at the high school level. That was when I went to his program, I realized that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and it motivated me to be where I'm at now, and I owe a lot to Coach Schwisow for that. If you guys want to get in contact with Coach Schwisow or Coach Wieser, you'll find their stuff in the show notes. They are an open book, man. They let you come by. They'll invest in helping you out. So I encourage all of our listeners to reach out to them and let them pour into you. Thanks, coaches.
Preston, I appreciate the kind words, and it's been enjoyable to see you go and find your success at your school and as you build your culture. So I appreciate the words.
I appreciate you having us on. It's always an awesome opportunity just to get to share what we're doing at our school and to get in contact with other strength coaches and see what they're doing well and what we can help each other get better at for our kids.